Hi, everyone.
Hi, Doc.
Good to see you all. Welcome. I see some people are
Thank you.
in Teams, so let me just send a message to join Zoom. Okay. Teams. Okay, we'll give a few minutes to allow several of our other colleagues to join, like 2 minutes. And for the other Accelerate team members who are here, please check the Teams link if there are people there to redirect them to Zoom.
Hello, Dorcus. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Dorcus.
Yeah, good morning, Elisa. Yeah, we were just giving 2 minutes for the other colleagues to join, and then we'll start in like 1 minute. Sorry for that. Just wanted to give some time for people who are moving from one meeting to the next. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's 3 minutes past time, so we'll start and the other people can join us. Thank you very much for joining. It's been a while, and I'm happy to see you all. And I think the whole team is happy that you are here today. So we're going to be talking about documenting and aligning breeding efforts with breeding targets. And just to give you the structure of the meeting or the meeting summary or design is that we're going to be providing information and also rolling out of the breeding scheme manager that is linked to the breeding portal on Scriptoria. And we are hoping that the outcome is that all breeding teams are able to document their breeding schemes. And this should be in alignment with the market segments, the target product profiles, and the breeding pipelines as represented on the breeding portal. Of course, housekeeping issues from ABI Accelerate team, that's part of the agenda that I'm giving now. I'll give a short presentation on our ambition on this alignment and what we mean and what we are hoping that the teams would do after this meeting. I will give a demo on the breeding scheme manager, and then we can have some time for discussion together. In case you do have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to any of the team members on the Accelerate here. Christian, Vanna, Boja, Basnet, myself, Michael, we have Bodo, and of course, Eduardo. He was the first developer of the breeding scheme manager through the breeding pipeline manager that had also the market segments, the breeding pipelines listed there, and that is the instance that we have taken to just link with the breeding portal. So having said that, I will now go to the presentation. Oh, something is happening with my mouse. Yeah. All right. So it is good. It's also a reporting period for the initiatives, for the work packages that we are all part of. And it's good to keep our eye on the goal. And ideally, we are all hoping as Accelerate to have at least 70% of our breeding pipelines to have increased the rate of genetic gains, not just in any variety, but on farmer preferred varieties, which means there are some trait preferences that need to be considered, and that these are also delivered to the seed system. So that's our goal. It has a lot there when you break it down technically, and we should always keep the eye on that ball. So what have we been doing for a couple of years now? I think we have all been talking about moving from breeding by luck to breeding by target. And this just means going from some of what I myself have done previously is that I'm going to make these crosses, evaluate them and select. And if I get a good product that is accepted, then I will release this as a new variety. And where we want to go to is that we do have a product that is required. We have the specifications, and we want to build it using those specifications by designing our crossing, evaluation, and selection decisions based on these specifications, and this acts as our blueprint. And this blueprint, as we have mentioned several times, is our target product profile. During this work we've been doing for a couple of years now, discussing with breeding teams, there are some things that we have had across the teams, some hypes that we would like to discount. And one of those is that optimization of breeding programs is equal to simulation or quantitative genetics theory as is. In reality, actually, and given all the discussions we have been having with breeding teams, optimization involves several steps. The first one is, of course, knowing what your blueprint is. What are your breeding targets? And of course, given the breeding targets, there is need to do some optimization research, because you cannot optimize something when you don't know how the ideal will look like. Because in this case, all programs have resources only to carry out one scenario, which is the actual scenario that you can carry out in a year or something like that, given all the resources that you do have. And this is where optimization research via simulations or retrospective analysis of your data can help in coming out, looking at all scenarios and identifying what would be the ideal scenario. Normally, we base this on quantitative genetic principles, and this is because most of those traits are quantitatively inherited. And these quantitatively inherited traits are more complex and to design breeding efforts around. But of course, it goes without saying that this designing of breeding schemes based on these principles also consider the qualitative traits with which the quantitative traits coexist in a given breeding program and given a certain breeding target or target product profile in this case. Once we know what the ideal scenarios are, then of course there is need to put these ideal scenarios in the context of the operational and implementation realities. And then after that, of course, given the challenges that come about with the operational and implementation, we also need to put together roadmaps to implement the ideal scenarios, in most cases, actually in a step change approach. And optimization is only done when there is a change implemented. So you can see that along this way, there is need to have different team members working together and agreeing on how to move from where we are at to the ideal scenario. Another hype has been that everything is separated. And of course, looking at discussions around defining breeding targets, partnerships, trade discovery and deployment, optimization of breeding programs, analytics, data management, lab services, trialing in nursery and operations. If you look at these individually, they can be daunting tasks. And in most cases, because we need different teams to support in each of these parts that are targeted, actually, in reality, they are all focused on optimizing the breeding programs. So you need to understand the targets, you need to have partnerships in place to understand those breeding targets, but also to implement your breeding strategy, and all those things, they all amount to optimized breeding programs, and that is the target we're having if we have to achieve the goal that just mentioning. So of course, all teams will need support across the programs. There is need for network coordination, updating breeding targets, breeding program optimization, analytics, lab services, IT services, operations, and things like that. There are cross-cutting teams that are supporting this, maybe mainly from ABI and from BR, but there are also team members within breeding programs that are coordinating this, for example, accelerate contacts or transform contacts and people like those. And this support is required to be multidisciplinary in order to achieve what we are intending to achieve. So nothing should actually be taken as being separate or addressing a different need. We are all working to the same goal. And that then brings me to the stage plan for product development. I've pulled this from the reorganized work package of ABI. And I think most teams have come across this breeding product development process. And what it intends to do is to show where the stage gets of making different decisions from product design until it's delivered to the seed system. And so where we fall in as breeding pipelines, and where the gene banks falls in, market intelligence, seed eco, and things like that. So in most cases, we're talking about a breeding pipeline. There is need to, of course, have the product design first. And with the product design, we can go straight to the breeding pipeline if we have all the traits that we need, or we might need to go through a trait discovery and deployment pipeline if some of the traits that we are interested in the products are not available. Now, when we come to the breeding pipeline, not all target product profiles might need for breeding teams to run the whole or the full pipeline. So when we look at the full pipeline, we mean you have a product designed, you're going through crossing and screening, early testing, late testing, and doing some on-farm verification. But sometimes, and especially when you combine this with the partners, it would be then sometimes necessary that some partners are just involved in early testing and late testing and maybe on-farm verification, sometimes just less testing and on-farm verification. And all those are referred to as breeding efforts, and they are classified into tiers. I think Peter Coldrake and team and the market intelligence team might have these definitions already discussed with the breeding teams. So if we do not follow these processes, and if we do not have the teams in place to support all these processes, as we've talked about on program optimization, then of course we run a challenge of having misalignment between the breeding efforts and the breeding targets. And how do this look like? And I'm showing this is a screenshot of the genetic gain report for 2023. I have changed the numbers in this document for data protection, but of course, when it comes to stakeholders who are interested in this report, they will be seeing the actual value that is happening there. I just want to use this to show as an example. So the moment you document breeding targets, it's an agreement between either the breeding lead with the institution, with the GI, and with the funders, that this is what I will be spending the resources allocated to this crop at this center too. And so just to give an example here, this is a crop A from organization X. And I will assume for the purposes of illustration that the lead breeder here is Michael Quinn. And Michael Quinn has said they are having 9 pipelines for this crop within this center. And those 9 pipelines are serving a number of market segments and therefore a number of target product profiles, as we can see. And because each pipeline, you can see this first pipeline is serving 3 target product profiles, which I'm calling here as 1, 2, and 3. And in each of those, it's serving a given market area, market segment area. And this is part of the prioritization that needs to happen. And Michael is saying for target product profile 3, which is West Africa in this case, here they are running a full pipeline, which means they have product design. They do have, of course, crossing and screening, early testing, late testing, and on-farm verification. But that for the other 2 market segments, they are running only tier 2, which is only early and late testing. This is possible, especially when the partners share the roles. And at the end of the day, when you document this in the breeding portal, at the end of the day, we will use this information and bring it back to you and to your teams when it comes to estimating and reporting genetic gain. This is the information that will come back to you because this is the commitment that you have made. The requirement at the moment is that we report genetic gain based on the market segment. And this team has of course indicated these market segments they are working. So what this means is that if you say you are running a full pipeline for this market segment, it means that you have data from crossing, screening, early testing, late testing. But of course, the estimation of the genetic gain, we recommend only to be done at late stage testing. But that means that you will have an estimate for genetic gain for this full pipeline. And also, because you have indicated that you have a tier 2 that does testing at early and late stage, you will have a genetic gain estimate for this other market segment again, which should actually be different from the one from the full pipeline, because the market segments are in different regions. And so what it means is that you will have collected data for each of the market segments. This data is available in a database and can be used to estimate these values. But what we see here at the moment is that for these two breeding pipelines that Michael has indicated here, we see that there is just one estimate of genetic gain. What that means is that even though they are indicated that they are running two breeding pipelines, two of them being full and the others being testing, actually for the other market segments, nothing is happening, which is totally correct, but there is need to change this tier to say this is tier 5, nothing is happening for this market segment, and therefore will not expect an estimate for genetic gain for this pipeline. The other thing that this says is that these are not two breeding pipelines, because we have the same estimate for genetic gain is just one breeding pipeline. So which means this information needs to be updated to actually reflect what is happening. And so that's how everything links from designing the breeding targets through the breeding and how you have set it up, and through even showing key performance indicators like genetic gain at the end of it. So the sequence of events, as we recommend, given that this is the reporting period, is that we need to define, but of course there is already some of this defined. So what is required is updating what is in the breeding portal to reflect what is happening with the breeding programs in terms of market segment, target product profiles, the breeding pipelines, and the efforts. These are the tiers, and how those roles may be shared. Of course, prioritization, costing, and resource allocation are important consideration in that. And then, of course, there is need to design optimized breeding schemes that are aligned to those. There is need to see the feasibility of each target product profile. Can it be achieved as documented? And this has to do with how many traits are listed there, which category are some of those traits, and that you can have support from the QG team to help you through this process. There is need to put together a breeding strategy, and this should be based on the quantitative genetics principles. And of course, consider operational and implementation and logistical challenges in implementing those recommendations. But all this needs to be data-driven. And of course, we need to estimate genetic gains and other key performance indicators that contribute to genetic gains. We need also to have on-farm verification of potential varieties to make sure that they have those farmer-preferred traits or end-user preferred traits we mentioned in the goal. But there is always need to learn and learn, relearn, and do, as we are talking now, to update those. So when it comes to documenting the breeding schemes, then the first step, of course, is that we need the teams to go into the breeding portal and check and see that the information there is up to date. Some breeding leads have already done that, and I thank you very much. Some are still on the way to do that. But of course, there are contacts from market intelligence. There is Agnes, there is Peter from ABI Refocus, and from Accelerate, there is Boja, who is online today. And then once these are updated, there's need to appoint someone to document the breeding schemes in alignment with the breeding targets. The breeding scheme manager links with the breeding portal, and therefore we need that the breeding schemes that are entered there are actually aligned to the breeding targets, such that they are not just tests. In our open instance, where we call the breeding pipeline manager, we have seen that several people have gone there and tried out the system as tests, but the breeding schemes are not as documented as we would like them to be, linked to the breeding schemes in a way that can inform breeding decisions. In this case, when we say breeding schemes, we're talking about the crossing, the evaluation, and selection decisions that are geared towards either recycling new parents or advancing products. And in this, you can, if you have a question, you can either contact myself, Christian Boja, Bodo, and many others that we might introduce in the near future as they join. So I want to stop there, just in case there is a question. I can't see if there are hands raised. Please jump in if you have a question. Otherwise, I would like to go into demonstrating the breed. Okay, I can see Apana. Please, Apana, go ahead.
Thanks, Dorcas. Can we have the details for the tier that you were showing? What is tier 1, tier 2? Where can we find this information for the, and is this tier at the pipeline level? Where do we put?
Okay. So this information actually has, Peter has it. I don't know if Peter Coldrake is online. If he is not online, this is information that we can provide. There is some definition of the different tiers. So yeah,
okay,
we can provide that information in collaboration with Peter.
Yeah, it will be helpful so we can also categorize our pipeline. I'm assuming it is at the pipeline level where we need to put it is tier 1 or tier 2.
Yeah.
So it will be great if that can be shared so we can also put our pipelines accordingly.
Okay, all right. So, all right, I think the team will reach out to the teams with those definitions once Peter signs off on those definitions. Thank you, Apana. Do we have any other question? I don't see any other raised hands, but if in case you have a question, just reach out and raise your hand and go. Elisa? Elisa, can you hear me? Please go ahead. I can't hear you, Elisa, but I can see your hand is raised. Can anyone hear Elisa?
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, sorry. I said, what is the difference in this link, this platform with the Kryptona? Because I understood in the platform to the Kryptona, Hanele are, for example, in case of potato, she upload all the information about the breeding pipeline of our breeding population. So why we want to use this information and update in this platform?
Okay. Thank you, Elisa. So like I mentioned, the breeding portal, which is in Scriptoria, holds information on the breeding targets. That is the market segments, the target product profiles, and the breeding pipelines, including the traits that are handled by several teams. But this is now the next step where you make your breeding decisions, the breeding schemes, the crossing, evaluation, and selection decisions where you map your breeding scheme, and you get all those information from Scriptoria, as I will be showing now. And that's why this system is linked to that. So where you update your breeding targets is on the breeding portal and Scriptoria. And that, I understand, links with the market intelligence tool, that is GLOMIP. And this system then also syncs all the information with all the changes that happen in the breeding portal. Elisa, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Hans, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, putting this all together and is very helpful. I just have a comment and a clarification to seek on one of the graphics, a few slides back. I think that's the poly breeding program flow where you're using the this one, yes. So we are talking about here the product concepts, then we are talking about the product design. Then also at the same time, we talk about target product profiles. So I think some of these terms are very confusing, and I don't know if there's a good clarity on what exactly the difference is among them. And I was wondering if someone could take time to draw some little more distinction between, so that people can use a common language, otherwise it could message could be sometime confusing.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's a very good comment. I don't know if Sarah is online. I would give her a chance to comment on this. If not, I want to respond to Hans that, of course, this is a challenge that we all recognize, both refocus, reorganize, and accelerate. Working internally. There are some terms that we find confusing, and there are sometimes where we are aligned. And we are working on this to finalize. Actually, Peter has been working quite hard on this so that we can be able to then provide the definition of the different terms that we use, and that can then be uniform terms, so that when you're talking about a target product profile and product concept or something like that, then we can all understand what we mean. So yes, it's still a challenge, but I think after this meeting, I think the next step would be to send out those definitions of the different terms regarding this breeding product development process. Thank you, Hans. Okay, I can see like there are some questions here. Okay, Boja has added some links on the chat, if you can find some of those. But yes, we will need a session of providing these terms and sharing with the breeding teams as well. Okay, so I think I'll go ahead to just do a demo of the breeding pipeline manager. Just checking time here. So this is the link, which I'll just click on at the moment. And this is the interface. I already, of course, sorry. You can see the process here. We will need that you register first. And then you will be provided for a link to activate your account. And then you will verify your email. After this will be sent for approval. And why we need to approve this is because this is linked to the institutional database where we're keeping all the breeding targets and things like that on the breeding portal. And we would also like that access is then controlled to the platform. And we'll have the Accelerate team as admins on the platform, and they will be able to approve each request to register and access the platform. And of course, like we said, it would be good for each crop program to appoint someone who will then update the breeding schemes on the portal. Okay. Okay, where was I? I was here. Of course, I already registered and will just then log into the system. Otherwise, you will have to go into the sign up and follow the prompts until you reach a point where one of us can be able to approve your application. And so here we are. For those who are admins, that's at the moment just Borja and Christian. If someone sends a request, they will be able to have a prompt somewhere that allows them to be able. I can see that Luis has already sent the requirements. And so an admin would get this prompt to either approve or reject. We can also activate or deactivate the users. And so that's just to make sure that's for data protection purposes. In this case, the link with the breeding portal. So ideally, like I mentioned, this is a platform for just documenting the breeding schemes. We don't add any pipeline information. We draw those from the breeding portal and continue with the process according to the prompts. And the first step, of course, is to add. You want to add a new pipeline, then that's the page that will come. You will select a given pipeline. Already, this data is from Scriptoria. There is a syncing between this data and this platform and the breeding portal. And so assuming that I wanted to, let me do beans. I wanted to select a pipeline for beans. Then of course I can just click there as beans or just scroll through the crops as we had seen wheat before until I reach the beans. And then maybe I need a climbing beans pipeline, which is already documented there and it has a number like we mentioned. And then what you want to do in the breeding scheme now is to add information about recycling times, time which is the number of years or seasons before you can select new parents. So let's assume it's 3.5 there, but the breeding team will know better. Is this time in terms of years or in terms of months? So let's select a year, just in case it could also be months, 18 months or something like that. What is the product of this pipeline? Let's say because it's beans, it's a line. And what is the multiplication method? Let's say single seam descent in this case. Scheme type. You can either have a scheme for trait discovery, you can have a scheme for population improvement. This is where you have, for example, a full pipeline. Then you have a population improvement also aspect. When you have just a testing pipeline, for example, tier 2 and more on, you don't have population improvement there, then it's a product development pipeline. And of course, you can also have a trait integration pipeline. So let's just assume that you have a population improvement pipeline because we said you're recycling parents here. And then maturity depends. Let's go with medium. And you can add, if you're doing different treatments, you can add them there. But here, let me say, that's the lead breeder for this pipeline. And then we can add here. Now, the next part, of course, we have set the pipeline. We have drawn the pipeline from Scriptoria, the breeding portal. And now we need to add traits. And these traits are also added from that part. So we want traits for beans. Okay, and so let's assume we want grain color, of course, as an important trait there. And then the trait type, this is also linked with the trait ontology terminology that is used normally there. So grain color will of course be part of the quality traits, and we will select that and add that trait. So the trait name and the code and the trait type are all coming from the breeding portal from Scriptoria. We're not adding them manually here. We're just selecting them and adding, and then we can close that because we already added it down here. So we want beans again. We want another trait. Okay, so cooking time, grain swelling, soup, bean coating, grain yield, for example, here. I'm just looking for a different. So let's say grain yield is an agronomic trait. We will add that there. And then we can have another trait for beans. Whatever traits. And remember that the alignment is that you have a target product profile that is listed there, and you have listed a number of traits. So all traits that you will add in the breeding scheme have to be aligned with all traits that you have indicated on the product profile. So let's say seed size, and let us call that maybe phenological, and then we add. Assuming I added that 2 times by accident, then I can just come down here and delete one of them. Now we have a couple of traits and we want to add those. Then we'll have this summary of what we are adding. This is a breeding pipeline for climbing beans. The recycling time is 3.5 years. The product we hope to get at the end is a line. The method is single seed descent. The scheme is for population improvement, maturity is medium, and the breeder is Michael Quinn. And the selected traits are 3, 1 quality, 1 agronomic, and 1 phenological. But the traits should match what you have on the product profiles. And so you'll create that new breeding pipeline. The new ones will always be on the top. So once you create, of course, I can see all this and everybody can see all these schemes because it is important. I use Michael Quinn because he's my lead breeder in this case, but I am the one who is adding the breeding scheme. And so Michael Quinn is able to come and see all the breeding schemes that we have added for beans. But the only person who can update those breeding schemes will be me. Michael can see what is added there, but he cannot update the schemes that I have added. So I will be the one who needs to do changes. But if Michael wanted to add, or another collaborator, and the roles have been shared, and we said, okay, this is a full pipeline, but we do want to have a different tier of this pipeline, for example, just a testing tier, then it's possible to duplicate this breeding scheme by clicking here. And then it will ask you if you want to create a duplicate. And you can see that we have a duplicate breeding scheme here. You can, of course, change some of this information here, except, of course, the name of the breeding scheme and what you got from Scriptoria. And then you can change any of this. And you could also change who is responsible for this. Maybe now here, let's assume it's Borja, who is doing a different tier of that. So we will have 2 breeders working on the same pipeline, but different tiers, and the different breeding schemes, the selection decisions that will happen can be seen within this differentiation. So that's on creating the breeding scheme interface and adding the traits and duplicating that. I want to stop there, pause there, and see if there is any question until this point. I don't see any raised hands. So like we mentioned, we need approval because of data protection on the breeding targets that are maintained here. But when you have approval, you are able to see all the schemes that have been entered here. You cannot do anything about them. I can delete all of them because I have administrative rights on the platform. But if you are a standard user, you can see all of them, but you cannot change anything. And you can see that the breeding schemes that I have developed is this one. It's this one, it's this one. They are highlighted in white, but they are breeding schemes that have been developed by the system administrator for testing purposes that are in gray. It means I did not develop those. So you can see all that. But you can also choose to see only the breeding schemes that you have developed by using this my schemes thing. All right, so that's how to create the breeding scheme. But now you need to then add information to the breeding scheme. What are the decisions that you are making? And I think we had, this doesn't change from the previous instance that we had discussed with the breeding teams. Of course, adding the different stages of the breeding scheme happens in the rows. So we do have row number 1. And if you are running a full pipeline, then of course the row number 1 will have your crossing decisions. Initially, we did use some crops use stages, some don't. And normally when we're talking about, for example, estimating genetic gains, we're saying stage 1 or stage 4 or stage 5, and that created some confusion. So we provided the choice of a stage and also a free text for adding the common name. So for example, let's say stage 0 in cassava, let's say this is a seedling nursery, or just abbreviation, seedling nursery. So you can add a stage and the common name so that we all understand what we mean. Stage 1 in this case is the first stage where you're doing your evaluation or yield evaluation, and where you can get data on all essential traits that can inform your recycling decisions. So if you are going through selfing stages, then of course they will not be stage 1 until where you go to the testing. The same thing, for example, if you are running a clonal crop, you can have a stage 0 as a seedling nursery, and since clonal evaluation starts your testing stage, and if you can measure if you can measure some traits there, then you can have your stage 1. This is stage 0. This is stage 1. And stage 1, let's say clonal evaluation. So that this is supposed, or normally is an abbreviation, CET in most cases. So this is how you add your different stages. Maybe from CET, you're going to PYT. Then that is either your stage 2 of evaluation, depending on that. But the information is then filled going by the row. So for the stages, I think when you hover on top of this, you will always get a definition of each column and what you're supposed to put in. So in this case, we have stage 0. The common name is seedling nursery, for example, or this is parents. Because we are running a full pipeline, we have parents here. And then where are the parents coming from? For example, let's say it's coming from stage 7, assuming derived from. Where are those parents derived from? Maybe F1, just for the purposes of illustration. What is the year? What is the season? And of course, the average number of unique half sibs, full sibs, individuals, and the sublines if they are there. If you hover here, you can see what is the definition. But if you have any problems, the Accelerate team is there to help you. And of course, this number here will be updated according to what, so let's say here you made 50 crosses and each of those crosses had 100 progeny. Then of course, the total genotypes that you'll plant, that's just an assumption. This is a parent thing, so it won't be that many parents that will come to the second row, but for illustration purposes, this is what you will have planted. And of course, let's say it's a seedling nursery, plot length, you are planting in a pot, so it's not there. But if you're planting in the field, you'll provide the plot length. So it's just the information about the decisions that you make on plot sizes, experimental designs. Okay. Of course, experimental designs within an environment, within a location, across environments. If you're doing some sparse testing, given that we have been discussing this with several teams at the moment, that's also provided. The number of checks, the spatial checks, these are the checks that are supposed to control heterogeneity within the space, within the blocks where you have the experiments. You have temporal checks, where we have said some checks needs to be steady over different periods. They provide connectivity and things like that. And what is providing connectivity for your data? Is it a GRM? If you're running that already, are there overlapped checks of a period of time and things like, or there is none? If there is no connectivity, that should also be included there. If you're doing any molecular work, there is also information that you provide here. What is the molecular technology, the number of markers that you're using, for what purpose? Is it QA, QC for paternity, identity? Is it for backcrossing, marker-assisted selection and things like that? Or is it for GS? And if you're using GS, then how are you using that population as? Is it the training population? Is it the selected population? Or you are using both the training population and predicted population? For example, when we're discussing the use of GRM, we mean that the same population will have both phenotypic and genotypic data, and therefore it would be used both as the training population and the predicted population. And these estimates will be updated according to the estimates that you've given as being estimates for genotyping. And then, of course, when it comes to adding traits, we added traits already. Remember when we drew them from Scriptoria, we added one quality trait, one agronomic trait, one phenological trait here. And so we're not updating anything. We're assuming that for this TPP, those are the 3 traits we are interested in. And then if you are running a full pipeline, we are saying, where are you recycling, the generation from which you are recycling from? What is the recycling unit? Is it an individual? Is it based on the family and things like that? And then a number of units recycled. This is a number that you update. And then what is the key performance indicator that you are using in this pipeline? Most pipelines are reporting genetic gain, so you could select that. The costs are estimated based on information you have provided. The multiplication units, what are you multiplying? Is it F1 or cross family? Is it individuals or sublines or half SIPs? You will select that and give a value here. The multiplication method, you can add whether it's a single seed descent, whether it's cloning, and then you can put a value there and the unit. So either it's a seed, it's an ear, it's a vine or something like that. Per plant, if you are getting, or per head or per panicle, or depending on the crops that you are dealing with. Now the first row, and you're running a given a full pipeline, you have to provide information about the crossing strategies, and this is where you provide it. If you're running a clonal crop and you have just one pool of parents, then you don't need to add a pool here. So you can just provide the first part is the number of parents. The second part is the number of crosses you make with those parents. And the third part is the number of progeny per cross. But if you are running, for example, a reciprocal recurrent selection scheme, like in maize, you have to add a new pool here to have 2 of those. And then you can provide information of the crossings you make within each pool. And you can select what is the mating design factorial, diallel test crossing, optimal contribution, maximum avoidance, optimal cross selection, and things like that. So that would be the next row. Then the first row. The second row then will be the next stage. And what decisions do you make across for that stage? How many, the plot sizes, the experimental design within a location, experimental design across the locations. If we are doing checks, what is that? Molecular markers, phenotyping, what are the traits, and things like that. And since at CET you are not doing crossing, then of course this information will remain 0 for that particular row. And you'll go through the stages until you reach the last stage of your breeding program, where you're supposed to deliver now to either seed systems or something like that. And that will be the end of your breeding scheme. I want to stop here and see, I can see a lot of comments on the chat, but if you have any question, please raise your hand and just jump in. Gio. Eduardo, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Eduardo. Thank you, Dorcus, for the detailed explanation. I guess I just want to make a quick comment. You know, with any tool, sometimes the tools are pretty well done and robust, like the one that you're showing. But the success of the adoption and the continued use of these tools are normally subject to, you know, one, the support from the leadership requesting to the relevant staff to use them, and two, that the teams that are using those tools are able to extract value that goes beyond the reporting. You know, reporting is one thing, but they want to see that they are getting value. Good examples of that is that databases and biometrics tools, you know, where there is a learning curve, so they actually lose some time, but the user gets rewarded at the end in saving time for their operations and getting more accurate and efficient results. Recently, the market intelligence team developed, for example, this tool called Glomip, which also has a lot of good information, but normally lacks concrete use cases to show the breeders how they can extract value beyond reporting. So my suggestion to you and the team would be that for the breeding scheme manager to be adopted, it will be good that you know, you come up with some good use cases that are very concrete, where the breeders can, you know, extract value out of it beyond just reporting. So, you know, this can go to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Eduardo. I think that's a very valid comment. And since you've been a member of this team before, you understand where the challenges are.
No, exactly.
So I do think that's a good, that's why we are saying this is not something that needs to be a standalone, just like the breeding portal or Glomip or something. They are not standalone or databases. This is where you are committing, you are showing what you are actually doing. This is the breeding effort that you are assigning to each of the breeding targets, and resources are also attached to those. So breeding teams and breeding leads have committed to most of these things, documenting the breeding schemes, the breeding targets, and things like that. And this should be able to inform the prioritization within a breeding program. Should we drop another tier given the resources and things like that? So ideally, there needs to be good use cases for this. And those are just some of them. And of course, we'll think and we'll discuss with breeding teams what value they should derive from all this. But of course, Eduardo, as we have said, here we are documenting what are the decisions. But we need to see this also translating into what is happening in the database, because that's where the data will be available that will drive this decision, so that when we come to the genetic gain report, you are able to draw the data according to this breeding scheme, whether if it's a tier 2, for example, there is data already for that market segment that you can estimate genetic gain for that as a key performance indicator, because these are also what used to inform our funders and things like that about the impact of the given breeding programs. But yes,
Yep.
if they are taken individually, they don't add any value.
Yep.
Thank you, Edward.
And I mostly, was referring to even small things like if the tool is able to quickly draw, a breeding scheme, so the breeders can quickly, get that breeding scheme from the tool to avoid that they are spending time on, drawing or something like that. That's already a use case that shows value. Making a
I think we
dashboard.
have a flowchart thing here. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, no, things like that. That's what I mean. And maybe, even the capability of creating a quick dashboard for the leadership or for the head of breeding, that they can, make a click and suddenly get a summary of all the breeding schemes from all the pipelines that their program has. And that way, they quickly get this snapshot. Oh, this is how my breeding programs currently are working. Some of these examples, I think, can provide that final step.
Yeah, agreed. Those are very good comments, Eduardo. Thank you. I see. Any other person who has a question? Sorry, we are on time, but we can take a few questions. Okay, so I see several questions in the chat. Okay. So Ismail is asking why our previous account with breeding scheme manager deactivated. Ismail, the answer is that we did not have the breeding scheme manager before, so you need to sign up for this one. We did have the breeding pipeline manager, which is still an open tool, but for the purpose of documenting institutional CGA and NARES pipelines, we will have to sign up for the breeding scheme manager that is linked to the breeding portal. So the difference between the breeding scheme manager and the breeding pipeline manager, the breeding pipeline manager is the open tool where you have to include, to add also the breeding market segments, breeding pipelines and things like that. The breeding scheme manager is more institutionally oriented to link with the breeding portal, and you can get the information from there. And that's the one that will be requiring that you enter the information. The breeding pipeline manager remains open for other organizations that want to use a tool like that, but the breeding scheme manager is mainly institutional for the CGA and NARES. Okay. Aparna, I can see your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Dorcas, when we get access to this, is it like specific for the crop that I am working for, or can anybody see anybody's breeding scheme?
Anybody can see anybody's breeding scheme, but they cannot change it.
Okay. So it's only read only will be access to everyone, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. Any other question? Okay.
Dorcus,
So yeah.
how long time you validate the accounts of the, because I sent my request, but that we need to wait for the administrator to validate my account.
Okay, yeah, because we are in this meeting, we are not checking. We are not taking the approval stages or our emails. Otherwise, he's supposed to send an email to all the three of us, and either one of us can approve any request. So it should be quite fast, depending on where we are at. If we are in a meeting like this, then it's not that fast. Sorry. Yeah.
No, don't worry. We are waiting for the approval, and after we try to update the information. If we have any question, I think we can send to you and the team to the
Yeah.
our. Thank you very
That's
much.
true. Okay, thank you very much. So I do think that we are 4 minutes beyond time, unless there are any burning questions. I think that we can stop here. Some colleagues, we ran this agenda today because some colleagues had mentioned they might not be able to join the Accelerate meeting, which is there tomorrow. We will be running the same agenda tomorrow at the Accelerate meeting with a few additions from the reporting updates that Michael has already given to the breeding leads. So if you can, please do join us tomorrow for that. And we will send out the link for the people to start. But please, we want to make this a usable thing. It's not supposed to be for people testing. We need you to have your breeding schemes ready. And once you get approval, we also need to know who is updating the breeding schemes for each crop so that we can give them access. They can update that as we give access to the other people, but only the people who are supposed to be updating the breeding schemes should create breeding schemes within the tool so that we don't have many pages of non-information that just clutter the tool and not allow people to see what is actually in the tool and what are the breeding efforts that are aligned with the breeding targets. Thank you very much. And we can stop here now.
Thanks, Dorcas.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gracias, Dorcus. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Thank you and bye. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
bye.